Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your usual host, David Fox, and with me, as usual, is the wonderful, venerable, one might even say honorable, Uber Hansen. uh,
Okay.
are here to talk about the fact that football is back. If you were a college football fan, you were treated to all sorts of pretty boring games and some really good ones along the way as well. If you were not a college football fan, don't worry about it because the NFL is back too. We've got real regular season football starting on Thursday. We've got the Chiefs and the Lions, but that's not what we're really here to talk about. We're here to talk about one thing, and that is the Buffalo Bills playing the New York Jets in New Jersey. But before we get to all of that, Uber, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, I was out of pocket for most of the day, just chilling in the pool, enjoying the weather. And apparently, unbeknownst to me, the Jets won the Super Bowl, everybody. The Jets won the Super Bowl, and the season just isn't going to happen anymore. Like, why are we even doing the show, David? Like,
I mean,
apparently they
it's a
won.
great question. I ask myself that every week. Why do I do this show? It's a great question. I still haven't come up with like a great answer necessarily,
Fair.
but we're here, and as long as someone gives me like literally any sort of money, I guess I'll keep doing this. Even then, like I'd probably just show up. If they said like, hey, by the way, the Cover One Roundup's going to be discontinued, I'd be like, okay. I'm still gonna do this. I'm still gonna show up. I'm still gonna do this on Monday nights. It doesn't matter if there's another show that you put here. Like I'm still gonna be here. It is what it is. But it's just no. It's just it's well. Okay, well, we're gonna get into it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's ridiculous how some Jets fans are behaving. It's a little
Yes.
it's a little much. It's a little much. But before we get into all of that, we have some business to take care of. The first, of course, being our lovely and wonderful sponsors, not the least of which is Underdog Fantasy, folks. If you have just your one home league and that one draft each year isn't enough for you, then Underdog Fantasy is for you. It's all the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and the lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your team, all the chances to win big, and none of the week-to-week hassle. That sounds like the best possible thing for me because I am in like 6 different leagues right now, and the idea of having to spend like 20 minutes before 1 o'clock every Sunday just trying to figure out each lineup is terrifying to me. But with Underdog Fantasy, it's not a problem. Just go to the best ball drafts. If you use promo code Cover1, that's the number one. When signing up to make your first deposit, Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is a free $100 if you use the promo code Cover1. Start today, sign up today. You must be 18 years or older and start winning today. We are also going to be sponsored by some other lovely people. And one of those people, frankly, is you all. And to talk about that, we have our wonderful friends, or friends is a lot. Let's call them colleagues, over at the Cover One flagship.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Thank you, Aaron and Greg, for delivering that wonderful message about Cover One Pass and how wonderful it is for our lovely listeners and all those who view us online. Yeah, also shout out to Aaron. Uber, I love how he shouts at you, but not me. Thanks, Aaron. What is stuff, Jack? Great, thanks, Aaron. Hey, I know those guys. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Nothing about me. That's great.
Could be just getting like a ride home or something. Like
he might be enjoying his Labor Day quite a bit. I don't blame him. I am also doing the same. Jessica Tennis says the Jets do that every year when they get a new QB. I mean, she's not wrong. And in fairness, I'd probably be doing the same if I were a Jets fan. I would totally be riding this high, but also it's a lot. It's a lot. Craig Walker says, did Bosa leave the 49ers and join the Jets? That would make the game harder to win. I would agree. I mean, the Jets defensive line is already pretty great. Adding Bosa would obviously be insane, but they're not wrong. This is sort of the kind of feeling that's being presented here. It's a little much. With just the tip of canoe, still one of my favorite usernames on here. What it do? It does well. RJ, regular viewer of the show and of Cover One in general. We love having you on. It's this. So let's just quickly talk about some of the nonsense of today, because there were some Jets fans that were really feeling themselves today, and I don't really get it.
I mean, I saw what DJ Reed said, that they're going to be the 85 better than the 85 Bears, I believe. Like, right? He thinks that they're going to be the greatest defense of all. Look, I have always been a homer for the Bills, but like, also kind of understood realism to a point. I didn't think when Jeff Toole started for the Bills that they were going to go 16-0, and seemingly that's what the Jets think right now. Like, Aaron Rodgers, probably better than Jeff Toole. I will say that he's definitely better than Jeff Toole.
We got to play the games first, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, they want to be crowned Super Bowl champs right now. This is wild. Like, it's wild to me.
Yeah, there's so much excitement. And again, if I were a Jets fan, I mean, the last time they were in the playoffs was 2010, right? Which was the second year for Rex Ryan. They made the AFC Championship like 2 years in a row. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time for Jets fans. We, as Bills fans, we've all been there, right? I mean, it was long time for Bills fans before they tasted the playoffs in the 2000s. But there's a lot of hype, and being in New York is not helping that, right? Like, exactly what Aaron just said. Jets are getting high on the rush of the New York media hype train. I mean, seriously, I mean, that is a big part of this. It's just like they're excited about having an actual team. And this is a legitimate team. I mean, you previewed this team. This is a legitimate team with a great roster. But, at the very least, this is probably the best roster they've had in a long, long time. Probably since that 2010 Jets team. But, I mean, are we going to sit here and say that this is a certainty, that they're going to be this mega team, that they're going to be this, like, dream team, that they're going to be singing Kumbaya when it comes to November? And I mean, this team was 7-4 last year, or 7-3, right? When they beat the Bills in the first week of November, and everybody was like, "Oh man, they've got a chance. They've got a chance. This defense is legit. This run game is legit." And then they didn't win the rest of the way, right? Like, I mean, they totally collapsed. They couldn't do anything because the defense couldn't carry them any further. And I mean, am I correct in that even though the Patriots were not that great last year, they still didn't beat the Patriots in either of those games?
That you are 100% spot on. I mean, I also another, just a side note, people are just writing off the Patriots. Like, I don't get. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are so confident that team's awful. They're going to be in a bottom 5 team in the NFL, or at least a bottom 3 team in the AFC. I don't buy it. The Patriots could finish ahead of the Jets. Like, that's a legitimate possibility, and Jets fans just pretend like that's not a thing either. Wild.
And this is the thing, right? Like, this division, this and the AFC North are the 2 toughest divisions in football. There's no question in my mind about that. I think that this division has 4 legitimate playoff caliber teams. Mm-hmm. And, you could call the Patriots maybe the weakest roster.
Yes.
But I would also say that their coaching staff is probably better than the Jets right now, maybe. I mean, I don't love Bill O'Brien, but I'd prefer Bill O'Brien over Nate Hackett. I can tell you that much. And Aaron Rodgers is probably better than Mac Jones, but I don't know by how much, especially a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is better than Mac Jones. And, maybe Mac Jones just isn't what we think he is. Maybe I'm still thinking about like rookie season Mac Jones and how well he played as a rookie. But even so, like the Patriots defense as a whole is extremely well coached because you have old Belichick and young Belichick coaching them up and doing a phenomenal job. And they were a good defense last year, and they didn't have like a great group to work with. I mean, it was a solid group, but not a great group. I mean, you still have Matt Judon. You've got they bring in Christian Gonzalez, who somehow managed to fall to them. They've got good players on that side of the ball. And offensively, they really just can't be worse than what they were last year. You can't be worse than having a lifelong defensive coordinator coaching your And Bill O'Brien is a solid offensive coordinator. He's not amazing, but he's solid. He knows what he's doing at least. There's got to be some level of consistency. So you're right. I think writing off the Patriots is a short-sighted notion. And then saying that the Jets are going to be this like super team that's almost unstoppable is just like, you're asking a lot of this team. You're asking a lot out of this roster. And they've got a good defensive line, arguably a great defensive line. They've got at least a capable quarterback, if not a very good quarterback at the least. But their offensive line is not anything to feel good about. I mean, you have Elijah Vera Tucker, who's played well for them, but has been injured. You've got Mekhi Becton. Who knows what you're getting out of him? Dwayne Brown is still on that roster, right?
Yep.
It's just there's so many question marks along that offensive line. It's like, I don't know how great you could possibly feel about that.
Yeah, I mean,
go on.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, and you can check out the Jets preview I wrote on the Cover One Network on cover1.net, and I predicted them to go 11-6. I think they're going to be a good football team, but I could also see them just completely collapsing and being like a bottom team, finishing last in the AFC East. Like, that's a possibility. And for every reason you decided, I think the best thing you said, and these are the vibes I'm starting to get after today. I didn't have these vibes until today, and seeing all the nonsense on Twitter after literally setting my phone down for like 5 hours, feeling great about it, and then coming back to the ridiculousness that Jets fans have. You said dream team. They could be a dream team. Yeah, they could be the 2011 Eagles dream team. That's what the vibes are right now. Like, it's too much at this point. They haven't made the playoffs in over a decade. They think that is Josh Allen playing football on Monday? Like, he's playing, right?
As far as we know. And to be fair, Josh Allen has struggled against the Jets in his career. He's played great against the Dolphins. He's played pretty well recently against the Patriots, but he struggled historically against the Jets, which is this is just sort of something that happens with division rivalries, right? Like, look at the NFC West, like those coaches just kind of sort of eat each other, right? Like Pete Carroll, when Jim Harbaugh was there, absolutely owned Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. You look at Sean McVay. Sean McVay completely obliterated the Cardinals like every single year for a long time. And Kyle Shanahan also pretty much owned Sean McVay all the time and kind of still does with the 49ers. So like there's these sort of weird things that happen with division rivalries. But even with that, like, this team is not just Josh Allen, as much as sometimes it might feel like sometimes. It's got a good defense. It's got a good coaching staff. You've got good special teams, like good receivers, good tight ends. Like this is not just a Josh Allen team. This is a very complete roster, and this is not just Bills fans saying it. It's national media people saying, like, this is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And the Jets are just out here saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to beat them by multiple scores." It's just like
they're not going to score a touchdown. That's what I saw. We're not going to score a touchdown.
That's right. We're not going to score a touchdown.
So to the point on Allen, and you're 100% right. He has 14 touchdowns in his career against the Jets. He has 13 turnovers. Like, that's bad. Yeah. That's legitimately not good. But at the same time, I'll trust at this point in their careers, It blows my mind that people are saying that they're willing to trust Aaron Rodgers on a new team over Josh Allen with the team he has in Buffalo. I can understand being hyped for the Jets, and complete transparency and honesty, the Jets could win this game. They could beat the Bills. They literally could, and I wouldn't be surprised. But to just outright be like, oh no, Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, like, oh, they're gonna blow the Bills out. Oh, Josh Allen, he sucks. He was bad last year. Well, I don't know what's happening right now. I'm losing my mind.
Listen, you're not the only one losing your mind. Like the Jets fans have clearly lost the plot to this point. Like, there's a difference between being excited for your team and understanding that this is the toughest division in football, and that going against one of the best rosters in the NFL is not some easy task or another. And you can't just feel confident in it just because you got a new quarterback and the vibes are off in Buffalo, which is really just a sort of media fabrication just because Stephon Diggs missed one practice of OTAs, right? Which kind of leads us into our first real topic, right? Which is, or at least our first news part, which is not about the Jets, not about the Bills, but about another AFC contender, probably the AFC contender, our most recent Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have Mahomes. They have Andy Reid. This is a great team. But, like, one of their best players is Chris Jones, who has said multiple times now he's willing to hold out until week 8. And at this point, I'm inclined to believe him. Like, this is far and away their best defensive player, who had an amazing season last year. I mean, just a great season and he's been a great player for them for years. I mean, this is truly one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And if he's not playing for this team, that's a big deal. And no one seemingly is talking about this rift between Kansas City and Chris Jones, despite the fact that he's not practicing with them. He hasn't practiced them all offseason. He wants a new deal. He wants all this. He's willing to hold out until the regular season. But because Stephon Diggs missed one practice in OTAs and yelled at Josh Allen during a brutal playoff loss, suddenly Stephon Diggs wants out, and Chris Jones, they'll work it out. They'll work it out with Chris Jones. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe the strip clubs in Kansas City aren't enough for Chris Jones. Maybe he needs to go. Maybe he needs to go across the border to, like, Oklahoma or something.
I listen to sports talk radio basically all day, every day, like NFL radio on Sirius XM, a couple other stations, and then fill it in with podcasts and things like that along the lines. NFL radio today, it was a pretty consistent subject. They were talking about Chris Jones, but the narrative that they were spinning was something that was really odd to me. The way they were speaking about it is, it's not a big deal. He just wants money. He's not going to be there. And they're like, well, but they still have Patrick Mahomes, and they still have Travis Kelce, and they still have Andy Reid, which is wholly true. But at the same time, Chris Jones, outside of Andy Reid, outside of Travis Kelce, outside of Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones is your guy. If you don't have him, there's a big problem. He's not reporting. We haven't seen a holdout like this from a superstar since Le'Veon Bell, essentially. And we're just pretending like this is fine. This is okay. And I get that the Super Bowl buys you time and it buys you a little bit of positivity from people. But the way that the national media and the way that fans across the NFL are acting like, the Chris Jones isn't Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year. I don't give a damn anymore. It's 2023. Now it's time to come win a Super Bowl this year. If they don't have Chris Jones, they're not winning the Super Bowl. So I don't understand why we're acting like it's not a big deal. And we're still on this narrative with Stephon Diggs and talking about strip clubs in Buffalo. What the hell is happening?
It's so funny that Jason Whitlock, of all people, was the one who talked about this, because Jason Whitlock, for those who don't know, is a journalist. I use that term very loosely for Fox Sports. And he got his, like, big jump into the national spotlight when he was in Kansas City and didn't break the story necessarily, but was pretty much the only one who was willing to write about and talk about the fact that at the time, head coach Marty Schottenheimer was having an affair with a stripper in Kansas City and had an illegitimate child with this stripper, and that was why he ended up getting fired from the Kansas City Chiefs. And now, 20 20 odd years later, he's on Fox Sports in your face at like 10 a.m. talking about how Stephon Diggs doesn't think the strip clubs in Buffalo are good enough for him. So he's got to get out. It's just like, yeah, it's nothing about this that makes any sense. I don't get it.
It's been the longest offseason ever. It really has. And like,
gosh.
the Stephon Diggs thing isn't a story at this point. It doesn't matter. Like, he's going to play Monday night. You know who's not?
Right.
Chris Jones. Like, he's not.
Right.
That's a massive story. They play on Thursday, and he hasn't even showed up to camp or anything. He's not there.
They play on Thursday against a team that just barely missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the Lions could win that game. It's not so far out of the realm of possibility that they can't win that game, even if it is in Kansas City and against the Chiefs. But without Chris Jones, I mean, Jared Goff is going to have all the time in the world to sit back there and carve up a pretty not great secondary of the Chiefs. Like, what are we? Why is this not a discussion? Why is this not a thing?
And you know what the headline is going to be on Friday. Let's say the Lions win that game. They score 57 points. I don't even know if that's possible. I mean, somehow you can score 57 points. Let's say the Lions score 57 points. The headlines on Friday are going to be Stephon Diggs doesn't show up at a strip club in Buffalo. It's going to be some nonsense like that because it can't be anti-Chiefs. I don't understand. It has to be. It's been the summer, like, for Seinfeld fans, right? You have the summer of George. This is the summer of anti-Bills. I have no idea what's happening. Like, I can't wait for football to start, especially for Monday night against the Jets. And again, the Jets could win that game. I just need the Bills to go on there and slap the living. I won't swear because then I think we have issues with floating things.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, I hope they slap the shit out of the freaking Jets. Like, this is ridiculous at this point.
Gosh, it's just.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you. I mean, it's gotten to the point where, like, you know, at first this like week 1 matchup against the Jets in New Jersey, was this like, oh, this will be interesting. This will be fun. This will be, you know, Monday Night Football. That'll be like a lot of eyes. It's a lot of fun. It'll be very, very interesting. Now it's just turned into, I hope this just gets scorched earth, like 55-13 or something like that. Like, I am totally here for the most boring blowout game of all time. I hope the Jets just plant their face into the ground and leave in the third quarter. I want this so badly. I want so badly for the Jets to fall flat on their face and start 0-1. And as some other people have brought up in the chat, as just the typical news says, the Jets' first 2 games are against the Bills and the Cowboys. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that they could start 0-2. You're not wrong. I mean, the Cowboys are a good team. They've got a great roster. They could start 0-2. This is and when you're in a division like the AFC East, you can't start 0-2.
Yeah, and I do think the Bills have a bit, well, just to kind of a little bit back to football here, but a good benefit for the Bills is that they play the Raiders and the Commanders the following 2 weeks. And not saying those are gimmies, because no game in the NFL is gimmies, but
right.
I would rather play the Raiders next week than the Cowboys. Like that's just
100%.
You know,
the Bills have the anyone would like to do that.
Yeah. If the Bills lose this game, they have the opportunity to go back home and play the Raiders and right the ship. If the Jets lose this game, well, they better come to play against the Cowboys, because if they start 0-2, they might as well just run Aaron Rodgers out of that town. Like, he doesn't even have to show up to practice anymore, because that media will eat him alive. And that's why this game, I believe, is way more important to the Jets than it is the Jets. Right. Can't lose. If the Jets lose, their season's in jeopardy.
And this is the thing, right? Like if you could sit here in some circumstances, you could say, like, okay, you have year 1 with a new quarterback. You have year 1 with a new offensive coordinator. Some things just take time, right? Like, it will take some time to get into the groove of things. The problem is that if you don't win this year with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, are you going to win next year with a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers? What? I don't feel confident in that, and Jets fans shouldn't either.
If they don't win this year with Aaron Rodgers, there will be no Aaron Rodgers next year. Like that's another part to this. And then that team's just a disaster. Like they're not going to be able to pay young play. Like there's so many issues on the horizon for the Jets that those fans are seemingly just ignoring because they're so hyped for the season, and they should be hyped for the season. But the idea or the nonsense that's being spewed by, and maybe it's just the vocal minority of Jets fans, it's gotten to a head. Like it's gotten ridiculous. I literally think this is going to be a close game. I look at the Jets and I see a very talented roster. I see a roster that can legitimately compete for the AFC East, if not the number one seed in the AFC. But I don't think they're the favorites. I don't think they're right away better than the Bills. The Bills can go in there and literally dominate them this week, and I wouldn't be surprised. So there's so much here where you can kind of split the middle ground, and you have some Jets fans that have just taken it to a ridiculous extreme. Not just Jets fans, Jets players thinking they're one of the greatest teams of all time, and they haven't even played a snap this year.
And the other part of this, right, is just that, like, look, I understand that the Jets beat the Bills last year. I get it. I understand that. And largely because Josh Allen didn't play well. The offense didn't play well. Some people kind of framed it as, oh, the Bills got bullied on the ground, and that's how you beat the Bills. And it's like, okay, like, that's what happens, I guess, when you can't throw the football. And because Zach Wilson was your quarterback, and also because the Bills offense kept turning the ball over and being ineffective on third down. That's fine. If you want to blame that all on the run game that you had, sure, whatever, that's fine. But, you know, and the Jets have improved their run game, right? I mean, adding Dalvin Cook is not nothing, obviously. It's a little odd to do that when you have a crowded running back room, but that's neither here nor there. But I do think that, like, the Bills were also very close to winning that game despite playing one of their worst games of the season. And if we're talking about the Bills of last year, right? They lose the Jets game, they lose the Vikings game, and they lose the Dolphins game, right? All by one score, and they could have won all three of those games very realistically. This wasn't like some, you know, the Dolphins had some 3-touchdown lead, and the Bills came back and you know, made it closer than it actually seemed. No, they were in every single one of these games. They lose the Vikings game by the most ridiculous ways possible. Yeah. They lose the Jets game because their offense can't do diddly poo. And they lose the Dolphins game because it was 100 billion degrees and people were just like dropping every other play because they couldn't handle the heat in week 3. Like, this team was not that far from being 16-0, which is a ridiculous thing to think about.
Yeah, and you go back to that Jets game too, and to be completely honest, I never use injuries as an excuse, and this I'm not using it as an excuse here either. I'm just pointing out a fact. One, Josh Allen did not play well enough to win that game. I put more of it on Josh Allen than anything else. He had to play better. But people keep saying this thing, oh, the Bills lost to Zach Wilson. Okay, fine. Yes, they did. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White, Matt Milano. None of those 4 players played a single snap that day. All 4 of those players are playing on Monday night, as far as I'm aware. So you're talking about taking literally 4 all-pros off the field of the Jets. How many games would the Jets win if you took Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley off the field? And then, hell, I don't know. Who else should I just take off the field?
Garrett Wilson.
Because you have to take 4. Or Garrett Wilson. Sure. How many games would they have won last year? I like the term you use, diddly squat. That's how many they would have won. So it's just wild, like how we're just kind of rewriting history and pretending like things didn't happen. And we're also projecting some ridiculousness this year that the Jets are going to go 17-0, have the 85 Bears defense, be the Patriots when they had Randy Moss. Like I just, you got to have a little bit of realism here. And like, I know Bills fans joke and have a good time saying, oh, we're going to go 17-0, or at least they did last year. Like, we all know that was a joke and it wasn't realism. Jets fans really believe this. They really think the things they're saying.
And again, the Jets have a good roster. This is definitely one of the best Jets teams I've ever seen in a long time. And this is not a team that like shouldn't be taken seriously. That's not what we're trying to say here. What we're trying to say is that like the perception, at least what it seems to be, from Jets fans is this sense of delusion that they are like vastly superior to one of the best rosters and teams in the NFL. And it just doesn't make any sense. Like, where are you getting this from? It's so bizarre. This whole narrative, this whole discussion is so bizarre to me. And, again, like we said, the Jets could win on Monday night. That is a very real and distinct possibility. It would not surprise me at all if the Jets win on Monday night. It's a good team with a good roster, some pretty good coaches, not great coaches, but pretty good coaches. And it's possible they win on Monday night. It's not without the realm or beyond the realm of possibility. But I think it's more likely the Bills just win this outright by like 10 points. I don't think that that's an unreasonable thing to say. And it's very weird.
We're just leaving the 2022 season where Aaron Rodgers played the worst season of his career. Like, we just witnessed that. And I feel like a lot of people are saying, well, he was done in Green Bay. There wasn't a lot of talent around him, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine, whatever. He's out of Green Bay. He's in Jersey. He's having a grand old time, apparently, talking about respect and all these things and having a wonderful time. Well, now he's on this roster, and yes, he has Garrett Wilson. So I will give the Jets, they have better wide receivers. Without a doubt, they have better wide receivers. I'm not confident they have better running backs on that team. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are very good running backs. Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall, who seemingly are both going to play. I'm not 100% confident Breece Hall is 100% healthy. I'm not 100% confident Dalvin Cook's 100% healthy, nor knows the offense because he's just brand new there. But what I do know almost for a fact is that offensive line is significantly worse in Jersey than it was in Green Bay. And when you have a 39, 40-year-old quarterback, you need a really good offense because they're just not going to be as mobile as some other players. If that offensive line does not hold up, and it'll become very clear very early on in this game if Leonard Floyd or Greg Rousseau or Ed Oliver or AJ Epinesa or Kingsley Jonathan or Shaq Lawson or Matt Milano even are getting a massive amount of pressure on Aaron Rodgers, that game's going to get flipped on his head real quick. And that doesn't mean that the Jets defense can't bail them out, but the Jets are relying on this offense being so much better with Aaron Rodgers. And in all reality, it should be significantly better, but I don't know how much better because they didn't address the biggest issue they have, which is their offensive line is just not great.
Yeah, it's just can't wait. I just can't wait for this game to start, for this season to start, and to just get this going because I want so badly. And again, like I said, Jets could beat the Bills, and that's a reality we may have to live with. There's a very distinct possibility the Jets get spanked and embarrassed on Monday Night Football, and if they do, I will enjoy thoroughly every single second of that victory. We'll get to some of the comments here. So Lord Corvax, Rodgers is an improvement, but is this MVP Rodgers or Green Bay last year Rodgers? I mean, I think a general rule of the NFL is you're only as good as your last season, right? I mean, nobody's expecting Russell Wilson to be 2015 Russell Wilson, right? Like, even bringing in Sean Payton is not going to turn back the clock on Russell Wilson. And the same thing could be said for Josh Allen, just to tip the canoe again. Also, Josh Allen's arm is fully healthy. Yeah, people seem to kind of gloss over the fact that he played with a sprained UCL for like half the season. Oh my gosh, it's just a crazy thing to think about.
I just spoke today with a friend about this. Shohei Ohtani, for the baseball fans here, is not pitching anymore. He can't pitch anymore. He has a partially torn UCL. You know who else had a partially torn UCL last year? Josh Allen. And he still threw the football every week. Yeah. This is not a slight at Shohei. That's a whole nother conversation we don't have to get into. But people just ignoring that was a legitimate thing that happened. It's another mind-boggling thing where now you have a fully healthy Josh Allen. You seemingly have one that he says at least he's more focused than he's ever been. He looks like he's freaking pissed off a little bit. Like I think you're going to see him trucking people, hopping people, throwing bombs. And I think one of the biggest parts of this team this year, and the biggest difference, is you're going to see him whipping the ball to Dalton Kincaid, which is going to just change this offense entirely.
Yeah. Former NFL head coach Mike McCoy. I have no idea if this is the actual former head coach of the Chargers, but I'm going to pretend it is. I'm also curious to see if the referees will pull their heads out of their asses and call some of the egregious pass interference against Sauce Gardner. That's always been a narrative with Gardner since he's come in last year. I think it's a little bit overblown that he's crappy or whatever. He's a legitimately great defensive player and a great corner. There are times where he gets a little crappy, and that's fair, but like I don't think it's quite as egregious as some people make it out to be, but so be it. Whatever. I'm not going to complain if they do, by the way. I'll be totally fine with that. Yeah, this is just it's just there are times where the NFL schedule makers, I don't really understand what they're doing at times. This is not one of those times. They were 100% right to make this the Monday Night Football matchup. They were totally on the money with this one. Oh man, this is gonna be great. All right. So we can talk more about the Jets. We can talk a little bit more about that. But real quick, let's sort of go over the final Bills roster, because we made our final projection last week, and for the most part, we were pretty on point. I mean, we even called the Boogie Basham trade. I don't think we would have expected that to A, actually happen, or B, been for as little as it actually ended up being. But I think we're all okay with that. For the most part, we were pretty on point. A lot of guys made it to the practice squad. Nick Broker, unfortunately, was one of those guys who did not make it to the practice squad and seemed to be a very coveted guy. He was claimed by a couple different teams before being awarded to the Texans. David Questenberry ended up going to the Vikings. Yeah. So that was another guy that we had on the practice squad. That was another, sort of like, it would be nice if he did, but we're not really expecting that to happen. But we're going to just take a look at some of the other couple things. So first thing on our list is Balen Spector and Justin Shorter both go to IR. Balen Spector was not super surprising going to IR. They were so crowded at linebacker, and they clearly like Balen Spector and want to keep him on the team, but you only have 53 spots, and you gotta figure out what you need to do. And putting Balen Spector on IR is not the worst thing in the world. So that's not a huge surprise. Justin Shorter to IR, it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with stashing someone who's as physically gifted as him for a season, especially as a rookie, especially in a wide receiver room as crowded as the Bills is right now. So in addition to the wide receivers, Andy Isabella also was cut initially, brought back on the practice squad. That's not super surprising either. He was not somebody who was subjected to waivers because he's a vested veteran. So he was able to just, like we talked about, one of those guys you just put in the parking lot and say, hey, hold on for a couple hours. We'll bring you back when we can. Outside of those guys, Ryan Vandermark, who was impressive all throughout the preseason at the offensive tackle positions, makes the team outright. Good for him. He's going to be the first backup. And one of the other guys that's going to be the backup is Jermaine Ifedi, who they signed like right after they put together the roster. And this is somebody who's been in the league for a while, was a first-round pick for Seattle a couple years ago. It's been on a couple different teams since then. Hasn't really found a spot or a groove, but at the very least, this is somebody with experience who it seems to be better as a pass protector rather than a run blocker, which is fine in my opinion. And in fact, I would probably say it's kind of like the inverse of what Spencer Brown is right now, where Spencer Brown is probably a better run blocker than he is a pass protector. And for a team that passes as much as the Bills do, I'm okay with having Jermaine Ifedi as your backup right tackle. I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of those things.
Yeah. So a couple things. So the Balen Spector going to IR, I think that's a player the Bills continue to want to somehow stash, and they found a way to stash him this year. now after this I was hoping he might have a run at the middle linebacker. It seems like that's basically out the window now and in the future. I think he's the heir apparent to Tyler Matakevich in the future. He's going to be a special teams player that the Bills can pay kind of peanuts instead of what they're paying Matakevich right this year. So Spectre, right. That's what I think their goal is with him next year. A couple other players like Ryan Vandemark and Alec Anderson, really cool that they both made the team. Same with Kingsley Jonathan. Love that for them. Like, hard work literally does pay off in the preseason and in training camp. And for those three guys, it really legitimately did pay off. As for Ifedi, I'm going to kind of pass a question to you here, because this is something I've been thinking about the past couple of days. Let's say the Bills are playing the Jets on Monday night and Spencer Brown's really struggling, like Will McDonald or Jermaine Johnson or Carl Lawson, whoever is just beating him play after play. How much leash do you think he has until the Bills say, Ifedi, you're in, you're the right tackle now? Do you think that that's a realistic thing that could happen Monday night, or do you think that's a realistic thing further down the road?
I think that's further down the line, because if Ifedi had been on this team since like March, that would be a different story, right? Like I would be more confident in something like that. But I think if Spencer Brown is struggling week 1, I think their plan would just be, hey, we'll just run 12 personnel. We'll put Dawson Knox in to help him out, and we'll make it work that way. But I think that you would be asking a lot out of Jermaine Ifedi to come in the first week after only being here for like 2 weeks and make a bunch of plays and reps at right tackle for one of the best teams in the NFL. I think that's asking a lot. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't rotate him in certain situations. I think it's possible. I'm not sure why you would necessarily, but I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. I just think that they would rather see that whatever they get out of Spencer Brown is what they get. I think that they're clearly willing to give Spencer Brown as many chances as possible, right? Because it's interesting seeing the sort of two sides of the Brandon Beane coin, where like one side is clearly always going to remember the fact that they had Wyatt Teller on this roster and traded him away for a couple of 5th round picks to the Browns, and then he turns into a Pro Bowl All-Pro type of guard for them. And they just sort of got a little impatient with him and just said, we're going to get what we can out of you and move on. And then there's the other side of him that probably looks at Cody Ford and said, we gave that dude as many chances as possible. And then we eventually traded him for like a 5th and a 6th or whatever it was. And you see that this year again, where you have somebody like Spencer Brown, who they seem to be giving a lot of chances to, but then you also have Boogie Basham, who they gave plenty of chances to, at least over the first 2 years, and said, nope, this isn't it, and we're already crowded at this position, and we have somebody like Kingsley Jonathan who can probably do more than you on a given down, so we're gonna move on. And actually it's a great segue, good job, me, into talking about Kingsley Jonathan, who like made this team outright. This is one of the best rosters, and this is one of the best defensive lines in football, and this dude just made the team. I mean, this is kind of a crazy story that somebody who comes in last year, ends up getting cut, goes to another team, comes back, and plays well enough near the end of the season that they just keep him on. He goes through OTAs, he goes through minicamp, he goes through the whole offseason, he goes through training camp, plays well in the preseason, and beats out a former 2nd-round pick in Boogie Basham, to the point where the Bills are like, yeah, we're going to keep you on this team. This is not going to be some sort of like roster manipulation, like, oh, we'll cut you and then we'll bring you back, or we'll put you on waivers and hope you come through, blah, 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 whatever it was. Like, they just said, you're on this team. You are good enough to be on this team. That is a crazy thing. And it speaks to the talent that Kingsley Jonathan has, like the legitimate talent that he has, and the work that he's put into like beating out other guys for this spot. It's kind of crazy. And if this were like, you know, the 2010 or 2011 Buffalo Bills, this would be like the feel-good story of the season when they go 6-10 or whatever. But when you're expecting to go to the Super Bowl and you have a loaded roster, it's like, wow, that's cool. All right, moving on.
Yeah, and the biggest point there, I think, that you made, or one of my favorite points, was that Kingsley had to straight up not only did he truly have to beat out Boogie Basham, which he did, he had to blow Boogie Basham out of the water, because I know that people maybe want to believe the best players always make the roster. I do think your draft stock does help you a little bit. Like, the Bills invested a second round pick in Boogie. I think they give him a little bit of leeway. So it was like, let's say Boogie Basham is 10, like that's just some value number we're putting on him. And his second round pick status gives him 12. Like, Kingsley Jonathan isn't making the roster at 11. He has to get to 13. He has to straight up beat him out by way more than what he's worth. And massive credit to Kingsley, because to be cut from the Bills last year, go to the Bears, then be cut by the Bears, come back to the Bills on their practice squad, and now make a 53-man roster straight out the gate, like legitimately make the team, is massive. One thing that's going to be really, really interesting, though, is when Von Miller's healthy again, the Bills ain't carrying 6 defensive ends. So who's the odd man out? Is it Kingsley? Is it Shaq Lawson? Or is it AJ Epinesa? Someone's going, or you have an injury somewhere, but as of at least right now, it's also going to be interesting Monday night. Is Kingsley the active and Shaq is inactive, or you have the reverse? I don't think they're activating 5 defensive ends.
Well, that is an interesting question, because part of me is like, is this a Shaq Lawson revenge game? I mean, anytime he plays against the Jets, I mean, Shaq Lawson is the type of guy who takes that sort of stuff very seriously. Yeah, it is what it is. But I think that it's just great that Kingsley Jonathan made this team, and I think can legitimately contribute to this team. And again, this is a stacked defensive end room. They've got great players even before you bring in a future Hall of Famer like Von Miller. Like, this is a great group, and he is now part of that group, and it's really fantastic that he's part of it. Another guy in the same vein of Jermaine Ifedi that they bring in right after those final cutdown days, Christian Kirksey. A lot of speculation about Christian Kirksey, a lot of rumors around Christian Kirksey, a lot of hope that the Bills would sign Christian Kirksey after he got cut by the Texans, and that is exactly what happens. Brandon Beane actually talked about how Christian Kirksey has been on their radar in years past, and they just never quite got the deal done. Sort of in the same vein like when Emmanuel Sanders came in. This was somebody that they've targeted in the past and they felt was a good fit for this defense. Eric did a whole breakdown about Christian Kirksey. Go watch that when you have time. Like, this is somebody who's 30 years old, not exactly in the prime of his career, but he's not exactly at a long in the tooth either. I think he's got a couple of years of really good football left. And this is somebody who's brought a lot of leadership, has been a captain for different teams, has been very productive, a Pro Bowl type of player. And I think that, again, with somebody like Ifedi, right, where we talked about like where Spencer Brown's probably on a longer leash.
Yeah.
In terms of like, maybe do you bring in Ifedi at some point or not? I think that Christian Kirksey's probably in that same sort of vein, just because of how little he's spent on this team. But there's also an interesting connection with him and Al Holcomb, who just joined this team as the sort of like not defensive coordinator of this team, because technically Sean McDermott is the defensive coordinator of this team. But Christian Kirksey has spent time with Al Holcomb in Cleveland, I want to say. And I think that the learning curve for Christian Kirksey, because of that, will be a little bit better than what most people would probably expect or anticipate. And I think that when you get into the middle of the season, if middle linebacker is still a position of like, oh boy, I don't know what we have here. Maybe Terrell Bernard is in it, Yeah,
Dodson.
we know what Tyrell Dodson is, unfortunately, who is now wearing 25, which
I don't know.
I didn't think that I could dislike him more at this point, and now I just do. Where's
Yeah,
25?
I mean, I'd rather have Taiwan Jones on the roster than him at this point, but that's a whole nother.
Oh my god. Cheese and crepes. But I do think that Christian Kirksey, who is wearing 55, an actual linebacker number, I think that if Terrell Bernard struggles, and I'm not sure that he does or doesn't, we haven't seen enough of Terrell Bernard to really give a whole lot of like projection here. Like he played fine in that first Jets game last year, filling in for Matt Milano, but obviously it's a totally different position. So I think that there's a legitimate chance that by the middle of the season, Christian Kirksey is the starting middle linebacker for this team. Aaron brings up a good point. Well, Kirksey lacks in age and athleticism and time in the Bills defense. He makes for inability to processing adds to play speed. I totally agree. It's an excellent point, especially when you're talking about linebacker, which is all about, it's not all about, but so much of it happens in those first couple of seconds, right? Where you are snapped to the ball. What's happening? Is it a run or is it a pass? Okay, it's a run. Where's the guard going? Where's the fullback going? Where's who going? Is this, all right, so step here or here? Is it a misdirect? Is it here? There's a lot that happens in those first couple plays. And for somebody who's experienced, like Christian Kirksey, who has been around the block many times and has seen all those sorts of different things that NFL guys like to do and how they dress things up, is very different from what Terrell Bernard has seen and experienced, whether it's been in the NFL or in the Big 12 when he was at Baylor. So I think that absolutely matters. And NFL coordinators know with certainty when they see a guy that's a weakness, they will go after that guy as much as they possibly can. And, you know, maybe Terrell Bernard is that weakness. We don't know. Again, it's very unclear what exactly Terrell Bernard brings to this team at the moment. But I do think that if you're looking for a place to attack the Bills come Monday night, you're not going to go and say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna hit Trey White a bunch of times, or we're gonna try to attack these safeties, right? Like, or we're gonna hit Teron Johnson in the slot." That's not gonna be what happens here. They're gonna say this defensive line is a little light, especially they can be a little susceptible in the run game. And their linebacker in the middle is not experienced, so we can try and manipulate him. That's where you're going to target. And maybe that works for them, but maybe it doesn't. Again, very unsure what's going to happen here. And what's going to be very interesting is whether or not Christian Kirksey is even active on Monday night, right? Like, Do you feel like he's still on that practice squad at that point?
So I think he's on the practice squad at that point. I think it's going to take time for him to fully understand the Bills defense to a point where the Bills, or Sean McDermott in particular, it feels comfortable putting him in the middle of the defense. Terrell Bernard's been there for 2 years. Tyrell Dodson's been there for however long. Not that it particularly matters how long he's been there. He can't play that role, but that's a whole nother thing. I think Terrell Bernard is going to be the guy on Monday night. I think that he could be a thing or he could not be a thing. We really don't know. Like, got into it with somebody on Twitter this week where they brought up that Jets game and they said Terrell Bernard was awful. My response to them was, tell me how he was awful. Just tell me how in any way whatsoever. The person never responded, had no answer to how he was awful. So I think a lot of Bills fans need to kind of step back from that. They're automatically assuming he's going to suck. We don't know what he is. I don't know what he is. I don't know if he sucks. I don't know if he's average. I don't know if he's going to be great. We really don't know what he is. I think he's going to be the middle linebacker. At least I hope he will be over Dodson. But I think there's a plan with Kirksey, and this might be a little bit of a conspiracy theory. So this is my idea. Kirksey's on the practice squad to learn the defense. He will learn the defense over time, over a couple weeks. Then you get 3 call-ups from the practice squad. The Bills can literally call him up for 3 straight weeks and say, "Oh, you're our starting middle linebacker, but you're on our practice squad, so therefore we have an extra spot on our 53-man roster." After those 3 call-ups, you sign him to the 53-man roster. Christian Kirksey, your starting middle linebacker. That all could happen if Terrell Bernard can't do that role, or Tyrell Dodson can't do that role, which he can't do that role. So that should that could be the path the Bills are going, is saying, hey, we have a free roster spot because Kirksey wants to be in Buffalo. Like, he literally picked coming to Buffalo. Another team can say, hey, we'll sign you to our 53-man roster. And he could just say, nah, I'm good. I want to play in Buffalo because I'm going to be the middle linebacker at some point.
Right. Again, former NFL head coach Mike McCoy chiming in. Kirksey is marginally above average, and that's already better than what we have. I'm really hoping that Bernard jumps out of his shell quickly. Listen, I would love for Terrell Bernard to be the guy, because that would be nice, because I didn't like that pick when it happened. It was probably the most confusing pick of the Brandon Beane era, at least to me. But I do think that it's just so uncertain, right? Like, there are things that Terrell Bernard does well, I think, that it just based on what he did at Baylor. But I just sort of wonder, like, is that what they're looking for, a middle linebacker? Is this going to be what they want out of middle linebacker? And if it was, then why do you sign Christian Kirksey right off the bat, right? Like, and you know, maybe Christian Kirksey really is just insurance, right? In the event that Terrell Bernard is injured, which again, he has an injury history. This is just the biggest unknown, right? Like, cornerback 2 is not an unknown. We know what cornerback 2 is. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of that you have like 3 different guys that could be cornerback 2. And you they all bring different things to the position, and all are, in my opinion, perfectly fine to be cornerback 2, whether that's Dane Jackson, Kyer Elam, or Christian Benford. Whereas with middle linebacker, it's like, I don't know who could start there. It seems like they want Terrell Bernard to start there, but I'm not convinced that he's going to be the guy. And it's a lot. It's a lot to ask out of a second-year player who doesn't necessarily seem to be built to play that position in the modern NFL. So that's my biggest concern coming into this game, and really into the whole season, right? Of like that and right tackle. Again, we've talked about this so many times at this point, but it's nothing new, and it's a little comforting to know that the Bills also acknowledge that and have done something about it to this point. I just sort of wish they would have done it a little earlier, so we're not sitting here saying, like, is Jermaine Ifedi or Christian Kirksey going to be active in this first game? It's a lot, but I think
one part of all these additions, which is really good, and using the cornerback 2 as kind of the baseline for all this, we know what the floor is at cornerback 2, right? It's Dane Jackson. He's the floor,
right? And
he's a fine floor. He's good enough. We didn't know what the floor was at middle linebacker until they signed Christian Kirksey. Now we know that at some point in time when he knows the defense, at least Kirksey's the floor. Maybe that's not week 1, but at least we know that in theory could be the worst case scenario. We know that at right tackle, the floor is now Jermaine Ifedi. Like, Ifedi could be the floor if Spencer Brown just is a disaster. So the Bills have essentially said, we found the weak links on our roster. We're going to add a floor that we can assure we can't be worse than these spots. And then we're going to rely on hoping Spencer Brown jumps, Terrell Bernard jumps, Kyer Elam or Christian Benford jumps. And if all of those spots hit, that's great. The Bills are extremely good. If none of those spot hits, that's great. The Bills are extremely good because they're not going to get worse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do we have anything else to talk about with the Bills, with the Jets? Anything on your mind? Anything you want to talk about, Uber?
Yeah. So here's my one thing, or kind of two narratives. So let me start with this one. So I think that there's 2 worst case scenarios. There's one for the Bills and there's one for the Jets in this game. Worst case scenario for the Jets is Aaron Rodgers ain't it. Like, he is just a disaster and he's no longer who he was. And they just built literally his team for him and he just poops the bed. For the Bills, and I think this is one that most Bills fans are just ignoring, but I think it's a legitimate possibility that I have thought about, and it's that the Bills are old and slow on the defensive side of the ball.
Sure.
There is a possibility that Micah Hyde doesn't come back from this injury rate, that Jordan Poyer is a year older and he slows down, that Trey White doesn't come back from this ACL, that when Vaughn comes back, he's not Von Miller. All of these things can happen and be real. I don't think that happens. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback he was last year. But I think we're going to get an idea of how close those two bad possibilities are, at least on Monday night when we watch the Jets play the Bills. We could see one of those kind of pop up a little bit where we start legitimately saying, well, wait, what is this real? I wonder from your perspective, do you think that there's any plausibility or what is your thought process on the Bills slowing down? Because the defense is old. Like the key players are kind of old at this point.
So I think that I agree that they are starting to age a little bit on defense, especially at safety. And I think they know that, right? I mean, that's why they signed Taylor Rapp to this 1-year deal to kind of see what is he going to bring if he's on this team? And in the future, if he is who we think he is, then we have somebody that we can replace him with. And you still have Damar Hamlin on this team, assuming he is, able and willing to play into the future, assuming everything goes well in 2023, all that sort of stuff. I think they understand that. And I think the fact that they approached free agency the way that they did, right, where they basically said, all right, who's willing to sign for $1 million? Right? we want to keep this compensatory 3rd-round pick that we're supposed to be getting for Tremaine Edmonds. So, I mean, and a 3rd-round pick is valuable. An extra 3rd-round pick is valuable, especially when you're a contending team, and especially when you have guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer more than likely leaving after 2023. So, when you have those guys leaving, and you have guys in waiting like Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, supposedly, going to be the next guys up, you still need to replace some guys on defense and just sort of re-age that side of the ball a little bit. And you also take into account that, on the other side of the ball, you have Mitch Morse, who's getting a little older, and, who knows how much time he has left. God forbid if he gets another concussion. You have a lot of different players on this team as a whole that could potentially be on their last year with this team. Yeah. And I think they know that and they acknowledge that, and they say, we're going to do our best to retool this roster in 2024 because we have the picks to do that. They have set themselves up in a position to be able to sort of retool this roster the way that they want to. Whether or not they'll be able to do that with the talent that's available in 2024 is a whole other story and not really in their control. But they're setting themselves up in a position to do so. And I think that that's really important for them. And it's certainly possible that guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are not exactly what they are or have been in the past. It's certainly possible. But I think it's also worth noting that the way that they have played in this Bills defense is not really reliant on the fact of their athletic ability, but really more on their communication, on their ability to play the ball, on their ability to, rotate coverages and stuff like that. It doesn't really have to do too much with their athletic ability. So I'm not overly concerned about it. And I think that regardless, I think both of those guys, particularly Hyde and Poyer, have enough in the tank to make it work for this season. So I'm not overly concerned, but that is something that's kind of been in the back of my mind as well. I'm just sort of, of the thought of I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah. And they neither of those guys have necessarily shown any signs of slowing down outside of injuries, right? Like Hyde obviously had the neck injury in week 2. Jordan Poyer played through all sorts of injuries throughout the season and was just duct taped together by the end of it. But I think with both of them healthy, you'll see what we expect to see out of both of those guys. So that's what I'm expecting to see from them.
And then I got one more for you here, and I want to see if you were kind of on the same page as me. So I've had this theory for a bit now, and actually mentioned this to a Jets fan today who somewhat agreed with me on this. So this game can go a lot of different ways, right? We could see a close game, the Jets win, close game, Bills win. We could also see a blowout. We could see the Jets blow out the Bills. We could see the Bills blow out the Jets. I have a theory that if the Bills blow out, and I'm going to mention it on the show once, if the Bills blow the Jets out, so if that's the one that happens, the Jets season's over. Like it's over. Because that media will just eat Aaron Rodgers alive, and that media will eat that team alive, and you'll see a collapse quickly. If the Jets blow out the Bills, if the Jets beat the Bills, yeah, the media will turn, the national media will turn on the Bills, but I have faith that the Bills can regroup and say, yeah, we got our asses handed to us, but we'll figure it out moving in the future. I don't think the Jets can do that. So if you, in your head at least, if the Bills blow out the Jets, do you think it's a bigger deal than if the Jets blow out the Bills?
Yes, 100%. For exactly the reason you said, right? Like the Bills have had some tough losses. I mean, that Vikings game, right?
Yeah.
Last year, still one of the most ridiculous losses I've ever seen in my life. The Bills had every opportunity to win that game, and they just sort of pissed it away. It still is amazing that they ended up winning as many games as they did after that game. And especially because that was the next game was the game they played against the Browns in Detroit because of the blizzard. And then they had to play in Detroit again against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day on a short week, won both of those games, then played on the following Thursday against the Patriots in New England and won that game by multiple scores. And then the rest of the season, they played where they beat the Dolphins, going down to a last-second field goal. Dolphins were a great team, obviously. They made the playoffs. They beat the Bears. They beat
the Jets,
the Jets, and the Patriots again. Like they won games after that devastating Vikings loss. And again, I say devastating. It's a cross-conference game, so it wasn't like it hurt them in the division necessarily. But that Vikings game was also right after the Jets game, which was a division loss. So they lost 2 in a row. And you had everyone saying oh my gosh, where are the Bills going to go? Where, are they going to be able to really make up for all this? And then of course, during that Lions game, you have Von Miller get hurt, and this team knows how to face adversity. I'm not convinced that the Jets know how to face adversity yet.
Yeah, and especially Aaron Rodgers too. He's dealt with the Green Bay media his whole entire career. It's a different beast down in North Jersey where he'll be playing his football games now. And I wonder if all this kumbaya, we're lovey-dovey, we all love each other, we're all having a good time, goofing around, dancing, we're putting Bills logos on tackle dummies, all this stuff. I wonder if that all comes crashing down on Monday night. And if it does, it's going to be Josh Allen walking off the field with his thumb in the air saying, screw all y'all. This is still my division. You got to take me off the throne.
Listen, the one thing that will always keep players together is winning. If you don't win, things get pretty dicey pretty quickly. So before we sign off here, we have an exciting thing, and I did not tell you that I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Folks, we are bringing it back. It's true or rubbish time. Let's go. All right. No, I said no. There we go. Didn't need to do it twice. Ever since the former host of the show, Kyle Salagi, left this podcast, we have not done our very famous segment, True or Rubbish, but now we are going to. I could not possibly go into a new season without doing True or Rubbish, so we're going to do it now. I've got a couple of Uber, if you've never done this before, I'm pretty sure
I've done it. Or at least,
yeah. So for those of you who have not seen it or done it before, and feel free to participate in the comments. We would love to have participation with this. I'm going to give Uber a statement, and he's going to say if he thinks it is true or rubbish. And feel free to comment as well. So first, this is just going to be kind of all over the place. I've got a couple written down. We'll go with the flow. So first statement: true or rubbish? The New England Patriots will make the playoffs.
Oh my gosh. Rubbish.
Going rubbish right off the bat.
It was all rubbish.
Tell us about it, Uber.
I don't think that it is out of the possibility. I think people think that is the case. I think the Patriots go 8-9, could go 9-8, could go 10-7. 10-7, I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they finish third in the AFC East, though. One of the Jets or Dolphins is going to fall flat. The Patriots are going to finish ahead of them. This team is not as bad as you think they are. They are legitimately good. And is the general NFL consensus on them that they're a bad football team. They are a good football team. They're going to run the ball down your throat, and they're going to play great defense.
Everyone seems to agree with you that it's rubbish. I agree that they're kind of being overlooked. I think this is going to be a well-coached team. Certainly a well-coached defense, if nothing else, and it's sort of an average offense. RJ actually brings up a great point. If New England was in the NFC, they would probably win 2 of those divisions. It's not wrong. He's not wrong about that. James also says hot rubbish.
Hot rubbish.
Yeah. It's such a tough division to try and make the playoffs in, and a tough conference to make the playoffs in. I would be inclined to say that the Patriots are probably not going to make the playoffs, but they're good. They're a competitive team that no team is going to be able to overlook week to week. They're going to be a tough out every single week. All right. Next statement. The Detroit Lions will win the NFC North.
It's rubbish. They're not winning.
Rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
Tell me about it. Let's go.
Best quarterback in the division is going to win that division, and that's Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins might be the second best quarterback in the NFC. People are going to lose their minds hearing me say that. But Kirk Cousins is a legitimate quarterback, and Justin Jefferson might be the best defensive player or offensive player in all of football. They can put up points. I don't buy into the Lions yet. They're talented. They're good. They have all the players on that team. But when's the last time they won a playoff game? Like, have we even walked on the moon yet? Like, I don't know. I need to see it before I believe it. I like the Lions. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but I like the Vikings a little bit more, even though they had a negative point differential last season and still won, I believe, 13 games. I have a little bit of faith in the Vikings that they're still going to be good this year.
I strongly
disagree. I know.
So, like, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that the Lions will win this division. I think they are right now. They're the betting favorites as far as I know, and I think that that's fair because we don't know what Jordan Love is going to be in Green Bay. We don't know what the Bears are going to be, how improved that roster is going to be. I think the Vikings, the way that they won games last year, is absolutely unsustainable.
Agree.
And I just can't see that happening again in year 2. If they, there's not a scenario that I think the Vikings, I don't think are winning this division. I think that they are probably 3rd or 4th in this division. I don't know. It kind of depends on how the other teams are. But I feel pretty confident in the Lions winning this division. Here's an extra question from Jordan Poyer's driver. Do they beat the Chiefs in week 1?
I mean, no. I say no. Rubbish. It's still Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes. Like I'm not going to. Even if Chris Jones doesn't play, like I said earlier, the Lions could have put up 57 points or something, and then Patrick will put up 75. Like I trust Patrick Mahomes infinitely more than I trust Jared Goff. Like I don't trust Jared Goff.
That's fair. I think that's a very fair statement. Although it is also fair to say that in that Rams Chiefs game on Monday night from like 5 years ago, Jared Goff did win that game against Patrick Mahomes.
He did.
Not exactly the best comparison to now, but I'm gonna make it anyway and hope that the Lions win this game. Moving on to the next statement. True or rubbish? The Arizona Cardinals will have the first overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft?
I mean, true. Who else could it be?
This was
I
true.
don't know.
All after all.
I don't-
Can believe it. It was true.
It wouldn't
I don't know
surprise me if the Rams were.
but they have Matthew Stafford at least. Like they have to
What do
win a
you
game.
think Matthew Stafford is at this point of his career?
Well, who's the Cardinals quarterback right now? Starting quarterback?
We don't know.
There you go.
Jonathan Gannon has said that we're not going to know. We're not going
that's
to
a
know
good
who
point.
this
Yeah.
starting quarterback is going to be.
It's Josh Dobbs, maybe. I mean,
Maybe
the Cardinals are an unmitigated. I mean, I've never seen a team tank so hard in the NFL. They have nobody.
This is a great comment from Steve Noble. It's rubbish because they will lose their pick as a penalty. They'll fire Jonathan Gannon and have some other head coach that they interfere with or whatever it was, and it's their biggest penalty. Could you imagine? Oh my god! Like,
It's going to be funnier when Caleb Williams doesn't come into the draft because he doesn't want to play in
that's going to be the other thing, right? And like this is a very interesting quarterback class that's coming up in 2024 with Caleb Williams and Drake May, and I think Shadir Sanders is also going to be eligible as far as I know. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it's an interesting quarterback class, and if one of these guys, especially Caleb Williams, says, "Hey, I'm not playing for Arizona," I don't blame him, honestly. Ralph Wilson Sr. from the grave saying, rubbish, they'll screw it up somehow anyway, some way. Fair. Roy Collins says, what about Houston? Houston is too, this is a weird thing to say, but they're kind of too talented and kind of have too many good coaches to have the first overall pick. They'll probably still have like a top 10 pick, just sort of based on where they are as a franchise right now. But they're not like number one overall pick situation right now. I don't know if that's really where they're at right now. James says true. Yeah, Jordan Porter's driver says true. We'll see. I am at the moment willing to say that the Cardinals are going to be the first overall pick. It would not surprise me if another team like the Rams or I don't know. There's other teams. The Bucks, honestly, could be another team that gets the first overall pick. We'll see. But
I just realized
favorite.
I just realized I cited Matthew Stafford as the reason that the Rams won't be the number one pick, even though Matthew Stafford led a team that didn't win a single game. I just realized that. So it is possible that the Rams don't win a single game.
Stafford wasn't on that team. They got Stafford because of that team.
Oh.
John Kintner, that was John Kintner.
You're right.
Dan Orlovsky, that was that.
You're right.
That team is just that team, by the way, also went 4-0 in the preseason.
You are right. That was
in case you're wondering if preseason matters or not.
2000. It was 2000. Oh my God. 0-16. That's so disgusting.
It's so bad. And the fact that they're not the only 0-16 team is hilarious to me. God bless you, Hugh Jackson and Deshaun Kaiser. Moving on. True or rubbish? The Kansas City Chiefs will go back-to-back Super Bowls.
Rubbish.
That is rubbish. All after all. It was all rubbish.
This is a lot of rubbish. You've gone three out of four on the rubbish here.
Yeah, I mean, so I honestly believe that the Bills got better this year. I'm not confident that the Chiefs got better this year. I do think it's a big deal that they did lose Eric Bieniemy, even though I don't think Eric Bieniemy called plays. I do think there's going to be a little bit of issues there. I wonder what Jawan Taylor is going to be. And the biggest thing is if Chris Jones isn't on that team, that defense, I know that people are like, oh, the Chiefs draft so well, blah, 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 all this stuff. Fine, sure. If they lose Chris Jones, that defense really isn't much. There's no game changer on that defense. Like, you can look at all the other contenders and for the most part, probably find a game changer here or there. On the Bills, you can find multiple. I don't see one there. And I don't think it's sustainable to rely on Patrick Mahomes to put up 70 points a game, like I've been saying all night. I don't see it. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC either.
Come with the heat. Coming with the heat on Monday night. Steve Noble says, rubbish, too hard to repeat with the competition in the AFC. It is such a tough conference, and they're also in a pretty tough division where, like, the Chargers are a tough team, and the Chargers have played the Chiefs tough. Even if they haven't won many of those games, the Chargers have played the Chiefs tough in the last couple of years. The Raiders have also played the Chiefs pretty closely in every game that they have played in the last couple of years. And the Broncos, who knows? The Broncos will be, they're such a wild card at this point. Who knows? But it's going to be, I'm very suspicious of that skill group outside of Travis Kelce. I'm, kind of weirded out by this tackle situation. Their defense outside of like Justin Reed and a couple of like downhill run stuffing linebackers is not all that impressive. I'm not totally sure what to expect out of the Chiefs other than the fact that they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that just might be enough for them.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it probably will be.
I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's not a great wide receiver. He's good. He's not great. He's better than Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's better than Sky Moore. I can pretty confidently say that. And he's better than Kadarius Toney because he'll play 2 snaps and then he somehow. So I just literally though, those 3, Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, that's a bottom tier wide receiver room.
It's not great. At the very least, it's unproven. And like Sky Moore could be someone, right?
Yeah.
Rashee Rice could end up being someone if Andy Reid schemes him open, right? Which is
Justin
possible.
Ross.
Yeah, Justin Ross. I mean, we don't know what he's going to be. But like, again, these are all just question marks. We don't know what this Chiefs wide receiver group is actually going to be like.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the Chiefs have legitimate question marks. The Bills have a few question marks as well. Like all these teams have question marks.
Jordan Porter's driver says, as Jordan Porter's driver, I'm suspicious of anyone named Uber, but he's right about the Chiefs.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Very fair. Very fair. Last question. Statement. Right? I'm going to preface this by saying you don't actually have to answer this. True or rubbish, jet fuel melts steel beams.
Oh, I am not commenting on that. You have to.
Thank you for joining us on the Cover One Roundup.
Yeah. Ask Aaron Rodgers.
Thank you all for joining us on the Cover One Roundup. We are so glad to have you here. We are so glad to be ready for the regular season. We're super looking forward to this Monday night matchup. We're going to figure out what we're going to do next Monday. Stay tuned for any information about that. And subscribe to Cover One on YouTube. Look for us on Instagram, on Twitter, or X. No, not X. It's Twitter. I'm not calling it anything else. Look for us on Facebook. Pretty much any social media platform, we're on there. Just find us. You'll find us there. You'll find all sorts of great content. You'll find all sorts of great creators. At the top of the show, we talked about One Pass, or rather our friends on the Cover One flagship show. Greg and Aaron talked about Cover One Pass for $60 a year. You guys can sign up. You'll get a free t-shirt. You'll get a little decal to go with it. You'll also get a ton of great content. You'll get access to the Cover One Slack community. Guys, that Monday night is going to be so hyped in that Slack channel. I guarantee you'll want to be in it just for that. It's going to be awesome. Jordan Poyer's driver writes, road to the Super Bowl begins now. I totally agree. RJ Melville, fun show tonight as always. Thank you guys. Very, very happy. Uber, where can the people find you?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at UberHansen. A couple pieces of content dropping this week. Tomorrow, about 8 a.m., 9 a.m. on Reddit, I'll drop my rooting interest post, which tells you who to root for in every single game of every single week of the NFL season, rates them on their value to the Buffalo Bills. Like, it's all based on what helps the Bills best. That drops tomorrow. It's the first iteration of 18 of them, which is a slog, I'll tell you that much. And then later this week, I drop a matchup preview, Bills versus Jets, breaking down the Bills pass offense versus their pass defense, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It ends with a prediction and tells you why I think they'll win or why I think they'll lose, which most of that I've talked about today, but I got some other reasons I'll drop into that article.
Perfect. You all can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy on Twitter. As Steve Noble just says, hit the like on the way out. I agree. Hit the like. It helps us. Share it with your friends, families, loved ones, even enemies. Share it with some Jets fans. Maybe they want to come in here and try and disagree with us. Who knows? If you know a Jets fan, share this video with them, and then also pray for them that they don't get embarrassed on Monday night too badly. So thank you all for joining us. We're so excited to be ready for a new regular season. That's going to be it for us. Thank you all.